Would you date an addict? Asked Josie, as she scrolled through the page of a barista that had entered a flirtationship with me that had proven quite economical, as he never charged me extra when I asked for coconut milk. His IG read 20 years sober, life sobriety coach, fitness expert. He was creating a side business of teaching fellow addicts in some ways to become addicted to healthy living. He wanted to transfer their energy of self indulgence or self sabotage into habits that were more cathartic and even potentially financial. Why pick up a syringe when you could pick up a sewing needle and start an Etsy shop? He was cute, sweet, and blatantly healing. And we liked each other, of which he asked me that night to come over after the shop closed and hang out, which, as I write, that could be a little dateliney. Yes, I cannot shake the feeling that I just did not want to open that door, and not because if the date went wrong, he might start charging me for different milks. My problem was that if the date went right, I had to handle dating an addict, even if he was an ex one. Would you date an addict? Josie repeated, thinking I had not heard her, despite walking next to her. The truth is that my usual ability to answer everything with honest quickness was stumped because I did not like the answer. No. My father was not just a mean, volatile person, he was also a needy one, and used his addiction as a veil for why surrounding adults had to somehow baby him. Do you still love me? Was often a question he would ask after making me cry. It did not matter that he made me feel unlovable. I had to still make sure he felt love. And his excuse? I'm a cocaine addicted alcoholic with a sex addiction too. It may sound deranged, but the excuse worked because here was a man with demons that ironically looked helpless and hapless enough to convince everyone that he was not demonic. He just had issues. He was not the issue. My problem is that he was the biggest problem and erased all my social cues in deciphering when someone could be possibly endangering or problematic to my life. When the producer told me he had been in a psych ward twice after paying for my dinner because upon first meeting me he asked and I found him an STD doctor, I genuinely still got into business with him. When Phantasm told me he had hated his mom and how she let every man mop the floor with her, I swear I thought, wow, the lack of compassion he shows his mother will certainly not affect us. When Andrew said, I don't want to hang out with you, I want to hang out with more ethnic Latinos, Nina being black and Honduran, and I Puerto Rican, we still try to get invited to his annual Christmas party. My entire life, I was surrounded by male pariahs, and I was particularly in danger because I always was what men in my life claimed to be, but were quite opposite. And the women in my family did not help me. In my family, I was known as extremely sweet and compassionate. The problem is, the women in my family were raised and continue to raise the girls with the concept that all your virtues are only virtuous, or at least measurable, by how you handle men's lack of them. I was only truly compassionate when I forgave my father for all the schemes, stolen goods, broken promises, and verbal assaults he handed unto me. It was only when I smiled as I erased my boundaries and he my self esteem that I heard compliments like, You're such a good daughter. You're such a good person. God will reward you for how good you are to him. That kind of energy is why, in some ways, I resented my kindness and generosity. They were the windows for predators to enter my life. For another person, they were beautiful aspects to celebrate, but for me, they were the stepping stones for my dad to stomp on me. I don't want to sound like I'm judging him, I said immediately after saying no. I was not someone that had deal breakers, I even said no, which got me into a lot of toxic ordeals. I was the person that went on overdrive to make everyone feel so safe with me that I ignored whether or not I could or should feel safe with them. I had defined my life at how harmless I could be to others in opposition to how my father was so harmful to many. I wanted to prove my life could actually heal the world, not damage it. Yet the fact that that was even a concept was not only tragic, but dooming. I was entering the world with a heaviness that was not mine, it was his, and he didn't even have it. Hence, I said no to dating Barista Sober Coach because I did not want to start another relationship where I had to deny my comfort level or where I had to accept someone else's darkness, even if past, from the very beginning. All right, let's heal. Let's discuss. So, sober barista guy, very cute, very sweet. I did notice that like sometimes when the shop closed, he would hold AA meetings or like I would see the lights on and he said, yeah, He does like little sobriety meetings for people, and I it was this weird thing of I was so taught to be so overwhelmingly accepting. Accept everybody, be open to everybody, love everybody, like everybody. You know, I I kind of miss, and it's, the producer, he goes, I've been in the psych ward, and I was like, we should go into business, Phantasm, I really judging his mom for the abuse she went through. And I never thought, maybe a man who judges how someone else heals or handles their pain, maybe, and that being their mom, of course he won't judge me. Like, there are things that you have to, in some ways, see as a red flag. And I was so taught not to. So, Barista Sober Coach was this really cute guy at a coffee shop that I would go to often, and he never charged me for the different milks. So obviously he was seducing me um via my pockets. Um and he was cute and he was sweet and he was healing. And I did notice that, like, when the coffee shop closed, he would have like these AA meetings, these sobriety meetings. And there's something, I think one of my biggest mistakes in entering a lot of my relationships was, and I've said it before, this idea that if somebody shares their pain with me, they've attached to me and they have some level of loyalty because they're telling me their deepest, darkest secrets that they would rather throw themselves in front of traffic than reveal to others. And it's like, you think, if you're telling me your secrets, you are telling me something that ties us together. You have a loyalty to me. You're actually healing. Because that's another thing, too. If they're acknowledging they're damaged or how they've been damaged or could damage, then they're obviously healing, right? And that's just not necessarily true. And he was, again, very sweet, very cool, but I couldn't shake this feeling. Not only that if the date goes wrong, then I'm going to start getting charged for milk, but if the date goes right, I'm dating an ex-addict who is sober and has been sober for a while, but it is this dark cloud that looms, and you just never know the day you might fall for the most random reason, if you ever do. But it's still, you're asking your partners to kind of take that risk. And it was very strange for me to say no because I was so raised. I think the tragic irony of my upbringing is that I was so raised to accept no, but never give it. If I said, no, I don't like that. No, I don't want to eat that. No, I don't want to go there. No, I don't want you to say that. No, I don't want to talk about this. Every time I said no, I got so scolded, so punished by everyone, both my mom and my dad. I wasn't allowed to have discomfort. I wasn't allowed to have a boundary. I wasn't allowed to say no. But I was admired by how I handled no. I was defined as sweet by how I wiped my tears every time my dad verbally or psychologically assaulted me. I was praised for how I handled having a con man as a father, for how I handled even how my mother handled him. Because sometimes my family will be like, your mom is really harsh on you, or I don't agree with your mom, but if that's the route she wants to take you guys. And I would be like, you're such a good daughter. They would say, you're such a good daughter. You're such a kind person. You're so sweet. You're so loyal. And here were my best attributes that I recognized I had, and I liked being praised only when they had to go through something dislikable. And I noticed, like anyone would, that when I said no, people got angry and I got punished and I got scolded. And I was not a rebellious kid. I was a really good kid that was demanded to be better than the poorest adults of her life, than the most poorly behaved. I was demanded to compensate for their lack of morality with my morality. And that made me, it twisted all these good things about me. I'm a very forgiving person, but I had to forgive everything. And you can't be forgiven everything. You can't. You can't just let everything go. You can't just accept all. And it was very weird for me to kind of have this deal breaker, and Josie asked, and I immediately, no, but it's not his fault, it's mine, it's just because of my upbringing. And it was true, but I also wonder, like, why did I have to say all that? Why did I feel like I had to justify it with things that Josie knew, explain, like, was that even that problematic for me, the feeling that the no couldn't just be a no. And I think it comes from, I was so taught to be harmless and to make everybody comfortable and to make everyone feel like they can be safe with me, but not taught how to feel safe with others or decide who I can feel safe with. And I didn't want to come off like I was judging a sober man, because the truth is, I believe and I hope that we could live in a world, or I could be in relationships where nobody has to be the villain, where I can just say, I don't want to be a part of your story and I don't want you to be a part of mine. Or I want to be a part of your story and you want to be a part of mine. Like something healthier where exits don't have to be so dramatic and entrances into my life or their life don't have to be so messy. Things can just be clear and flow in, flow out. No grief, no preemptive, can you handle that I was an addict? Because that was the thing too. I would be entering a relationship where somebody was asking me to handle things that not, people date. People that never drank or just drink at the happy hour date. People that had great parents date each other. Like there is such a thing as like healthy. I grew up healthy. I became healthy. I am healthy. Like there's just such a thing of like falling in love and liking somebody without having to sign up for their messiness. And nobody is perfect, but I don't want to be that person anymore that praises herself or is praised because she saw all your imperfections, all your traumas, and said, it's cool. Let's date. Let's go into business. Let's be friends. You know? And the problem, one of the biggest resentments I could have sometimes with these relationships is I went so hard to prove to them I don't judge them for their worst behavior. And they ended up judging me despite not having worse behavior. Like they just, oh, you're not that good enough for me anymore. I got a singing contract. I'm making money. I got new friends. It's like they faded me out of boredom or disgust, and not immorality, not betrayal on my end. And yet I went above and beyond to prove that despite their history of betraying others, despite their history of immorality, I could love them. And they got bored with me. And they got disgusted by me. And they walked away. The wildest thing is my father, I think I put it in the episode Aperols. We went out when we're having this reunion. We haven't spoken to each other in nearly 10 years. He doesn't even remember my age, despite the fact that one of his other children was born around the same time I was. So how about that? He I order an Aperol spritz and he calls me a lush. And he says, "Oh, you're an alcoholic." And then he would go on about how he's done AA and he suffered from addictions. And I thought, then why are you using that term so loosely with somebody that you abused? And I didn't see that. It made me uncomfortable. It felt like a red flag. But one of the reasons I said I got to recut this guy off of my life is because I fell back so easily into the place of don't say anything, act like it doesn't hurt, and smile. because you can handle pain better than the man that gives it. And the idea of just being with somebody, because that's the thing too. I mean, it's not even what if the date went wrong, or what if the date went right? What if we dated for a few years and then, we moved on from each other? What if the date was nice, but we both agreed it didn't click? Like, I don't have concepts of alternatives. It's either dramatic exit, dramatic entrance. It's either isolate or go everywhere, right? Like, there's no in between. And it's because I grew up with extremes. My mother had to erase so much of herself to handle all the overwhelming nature of my dad, and said it was because she wanted me to have a dad. But I also think it's because she didn't have one. And it was a giant trauma response that ended up traumatizing me. And I can't help but think of that and need to think of that when I enter relationships. So I feel like I wanted to prove I didn't judge him, even though I was judging him, but I wanted to prove that I didn't think he was a bad person. I just really didn't think he could be mine, and I didn't want him to be. Out of fears, out of exhaustion, because it's like I said, my father was a really mean, needy person. Could absolutely eviscerate you with one of his other plots, one of his other schemes, with his words, with his actions. And then he would always do this, "Do you love me?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love you." "Do you really? Do you?" After making me cry. And the whole thing was, I'm an addict. That's why. Because I talked about it. My mother was very upset that my father revealed to me he was an addict. And he said, "I'm addicted to cocaine and alcohol and sex." And she was very upset that he kind of revealed something that she was using, trying to veil so hard that she would come at me before him. If I said, "Daddy makes me cry," I was sensitive, and not that he was a man that made children cry, his children cry, right? And maybe it was overthinking. Maybe it was rightful thinking. Maybe it was just me learning to have a boundary, a deal breaker, and when I'm just not used to seeing that side of me. But I can't. I can't. I can't do it. I spend my entire childhood dealing with addicts. And I never dated an addict. I did date men that were overindulgent, right? But they weren't like snorting up the house every 5 seconds and, looking for every pocket of weed they could find in the tri-state area. They were, I think everybody has stress eaten at least once. Everybody has, gotten a little too wasted at the happy hour after a hard work day. Um, but full blown addiction, is really different, which is why I was so hurt when my father, we it was within 15 minutes of meeting each other, and he was accusing me of alcoholism. And already doing that, "You're so disgusting, but I'm gonna smile." That energy of, "I'm gonna make you think you're horrible because I like to," energy. And I just thought, I don't want my adulthood to be that way. I mean, I should I'm doing data recovery because I don't want my adulthood to be toxic anymore, but I definitely don't want it to be veiled and clouded by other people's addictions. I've always been sober. I've done weed, but when you grow up with an addicted father, it's funny, it's almost divided. You have people that become addicts because their parents were addicts, and then you have other people that become so about sober living. Like, I will never touch that in my life. And I always wanted to have balance, right? I don't crucify myself for having a cocktail, but I don't go past two out of fear, of, oh my God, don't open that window, right? And to be honest, nothing just feels more necessary than my comfort and my peace anymore. So if drinking alcohol is going to make me think, there goes, I'm in Mr. H land now, then just don't drink it. I mean, I've never had anything. And that's what I say. And even in terms of relationships, I've never had something be so good that I had to handle the pain for it. I mean, they say giving birth is like that, but who'll see? We'll see. But do you know what I mean? Like, I've never, and I just don't want that to be the question anymore in my life. I don't want any more relationships or situations where I am like, this is going to destroy you, and this there's a potential risk, but it's for love, and it's like, well, why is what? We can't just what? Like, I don't want that anymore. So yeah, I said no. And he's fine. He has a girlfriend. He's doing great. I think he left the coffee shop actually. So good for him. Check out daddyrecovery.com. Check out theandrewabuseit all.com and check out Hardin on all music platforms. Let's love, let's heal, let's grow up.